let's start with this attack on Iranian consulate in Syria. And when you look at this attack, how do you find it, in your opinion? What was the reason behind this on the part of Israelis?
Israel's idea is that it can kill all the top leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command, that they'll be better off, they'll be safer. I think it's a stupid, short-sighted policy, because we've seen it before, that when you kill off the upper leadership, the guys that usually come along after them are more less cautious, shall we say, more prone to perhaps reacting emotionally or reacting dramatically. So it can actually be a counterintuitive thing. It is fascinating watching, what a difference that 45 years make. Because in 1979, when the Iranian students stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran, Iran didn't have a problem with the violation of a diplomatic facility. By the same token, the United States was outraged. This was the worst thing that could ever happen. Now here we are 45 years later, and it's Iran that's outraged over the violation of the sanctity of a diplomatic facility. And it's the U.S. is like going, no big deal. This is trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Switch sides. And I think it says something about Iran, of where they've come from to where they are now. And it says something about the United States, that where it was once in sort of a lofty position of high moral standing, whether it deserved or not, it's now just a terrorist, and frankly, I think the case can be made that the largest sponsor of terrorism in the world is the United States, not Iran. And the United States by a big margin.
When they're doing this, do you think that they're trying to bring the United States in this conflict, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's another dimension to it. Is Israel they are damn reckless. I mean, they remind me of somebody like a drunk that's got a gun, and they're just walking, they're shooting everything they can see. They're not discriminating between targets. They don't care. They're not thinking through what's the next step, what happens. I've got, a friend, Steve Bryan, who, he believes that Israel doesn't want to invade Lebanon and is not keen on fighting Hezbollah. I disagree with him. That, in fact, if anything, and it was reiterated today by one of the Israeli generals, they're going to fight Hezbollah. And part of it is that I think they actually believe they can defeat Hezbollah, which in my view they cannot. But they also see it as their last best hope to get the United States into the war, and with the United States on its side. And I think that's going to blow up on them too, because this being an election year in the United States, you're not going to see the Biden administration eager to start sending U.S. troops overseas and having it's one thing to drop bombs on the Houthis, but it's a whole nother thing to put people out front and put them on ships and force them to go on the ground and fight. Whole different animal.
When you look at these type of attacks, do you think these attacks are mostly personally for Netanyahu, or is coming from a policy in Israel?
Well, I think it's a policy. This is not just personal. This is a policy. And again, we've talked about this before. The real irony here is that in the 1980s, the country that was supplying Iran with weapons was Israel. And I'm sure that there are some people in Iran that may still have contact with their original Israeli intelligence officers who were handling all those transactions. The world can be a funny place in that regard.
At the same time, we see that Iranians are talking about they're going to attack Israel, and they're announcing it. If they want to do this, why they're announcing it if they want to attack Israel? And
well, that's been more coming out of Israel and the United States than Iran. I mean, Iran says Israel will pay. They didn't say how, they didn't say when. The other thing you're missing is within the last 36 hours, 48 hours, there's also been a series of terrorist attacks in southwestern portion of Iran carried out of Baluchistan. And these Baluchis, I guarantee you, they've got ties with CIA and with MI6 and maybe with Pakistan as well. But I know that there is long-standing intelligence ties to that area on the U.S. side that goes back to, after the Iranians took control of the embassy in Tehran and plans were afoot to conduct a rescue, that we were getting intelligence via literal rug merchants. The guys that made rugs in Baluchistan were sending rugs to a contact in Bethesda, Maryland. I used to actually live behind this rug store, and there were actually messages that were hidden in some of the rugs. And that's how they were getting messages out to CIA and other organizations. And I know that just because a friend of mine who was with a top secret Army intelligence unit was telling me about this at the time. So I'm sure Iran's looking at this, recognizing, sort of like Russia has, that they're at war with the West. And it's not just Israel, it's with the United States, it's with the United Kingdom. And so they're not going to act rashly. They're not going to act out of emotion, or they're angry. They have every right to be angry. But I think they're going to find a way that they can respond in a way that will hurt Israel, hurt the United States, but not be in a way that's going to necessarily ratchet things up to war.
Netanyahu said if Iran attacks Israel, he says that he'll give them help. When you compare these two armies in Israel and in Iran, are they comparable? How do you find these two armies?
Well, number one, neither the Israeli army is going to leave Israel to invade Iran, nor is Iran going to send its army outside of its borders to invade Israel. Israel has nuclear weapons, and they could launch them on Tehran, but if they do so, Israel is going to really put itself at risk, because people like the Pakistanis, like the Russians, like the Chinese, they'll view that as a direct threat to them. Iran has long-distance, long-range conventional missiles that they can launch on Israel. They've chosen not to up to this point. That's why I say you got to come back and look at it from Iran's playing a longer game. And I think there's a part of them right now that recognize that Israel is in the process of self-destructing. The choices Israel is making are going to destroy Israel, have that potential.
If something happens between these two countries, do you think Iran would react directly, or they're going to use their proxies in the region?
I think right now Iran will work through the Shia militias that are throughout Iraq and Syria, and with Hezbollah. That they may, definitely supply Hezbollah with the different additional weapons, and some maybe more powerful weapons that they don't currently have. But again, that's a big logistics effort too. You got to, transport them there, or it's going to be either by air or by land. They're not going to do it by sea. If they do it by sea, they run the risk of getting intercepted, boarded, and the shipment captured.
Larry, as you've mentioned, this behavior on the part of Israelis doesn't make sense.
Well, you're assuming that the Israelis are rational. They're not irrational. This is driven by emotion. A lot of it is grounded in religious eschatology, a belief about doctrine of last days. And so, no, they're not acting rationally. They believe that they're on a mission for God, and that they're doing God's will. And you can do stupid things when you believe that. Just ask the followers of Jim Jones. He committed suicide down in Guyana back in 1978. But this continues a pattern. Israel had struck and killed IRGC commanders in over the last 3-4 months, and then Soleimani was murdered by the United States. So that's 6 years ago, I guess now, 5 years ago. So this is nothing new, and the notion that Israel can kill their way out of this is just foolish. And but Israel has always lived with this mythology that if they just kill these guys, that'll stop the threat. It's going to grow the threat, and Israel's going to find itself incapable of handling it once as it is executed on them.
When the Israelis started attacking in Gaza, we know that Netanyahu said, in the next month, in the next 2 weeks, we're gonna destroy Hamas. Just yesterday, he said we need 2 more weeks. We need 2 more weeks to destroy Hamas. How's that going on right now?
Not too good. United States is running into the same thing. The operation to defeat the Houthis started what, December 8th, December 9th, somewhere in that time frame, early December. We've been bombing the stuffing out of them. See, January, February, March, already to April 5th. We're going on full 4 months. And what is the United States doing? Well, first they put out feelers to Iran. Hey, would you talk to your Houthi buddies and see if they'd stop shelling ships in the Red Sea, please? And I don't know if Iran told them to go pound sand or so. Well, we'll ask them. But the Houthis are sort of a bunch of independent cusses. They do what they want. But now the Biden administration is sending the Houthis a direct message. Hey, if you stop all this rocket stuff in the Middle East and hitting these ships, we'll take you off the terrorism list. How about that for a deal? What it shows is the limitations of U.S. power. That, hey, we've got this aircraft carrier, and that aircraft carrier has been on station now since October. So just, that's 5 months going on 6-month deployment. That's a long time at sea because they can't be refitted with everything they need simply by air resupply. And to my understanding, there's not a ship tender, which is a ship that follows along behind and can then pull up alongside and then offload additional food, etc. United States has got itself in a pickle. It's losing in Ukraine. It's not winning in Israel. In fact, the Israelis are making life more difficult for the United States with their, now they've, they killed those WCK workers, the World Central Kitchen workers. And, the United States is not going to cut off support for Israel. They'll keep sending them bombs and guns, but it's leading to global calls for arms embargo and greater sanctions. It's moving against the United States, not in its favor.
When this attack happened, Mossad was talking about that this was not Israelis who attacked this car, these people who were trying to help Gazans, trying to feed Gazans.
Oh, it absolutely was Israelis.
Yeah.
It was Israeli military. You got to understand, Nima, that these drone operators, they're a military unit. So they show up to work at a building. And in that building, they got rows of chairs and desks, and they've got joysticks, just like, you might play a video game. And they'll sit in front of their screens, and sometimes, there'll be massive screens. And they also have a way, they'll have like good Lord, maybe a 10-foot screen up front that you could have 20, 30 different drone operators and different drones up flying in different places. And they're all being monitored by, there are lieutenants, there are captains, there are majors, there's lieutenant colonels. So it's not just some kid, 19-year-old who's good at video games. It's, could be male, could be female. And they're sitting there, they're given a specific drone that's flying a particular pattern. They're the one operating that. They may be working in tandem with some other operator. And then when they find the target and they've got to confirm what it is, they don't get to say, I think these are some bad people. No. You gotta say, hey, we've identified this vehicle or these 3 vehicles, and we believe they're aligned with this, this, and this. And that goes up the chain of command, and somebody at the top says, okay, yeah, blow them away. And it would be, they hit the first car, did damage to it, but apparently didn't kill everybody. And so they scrambled out of that car, got in, there were 2 other cars, and they got in the other 2 cars. The cars continued driving for about another almost a kilometer south. Second car gets hit. Again, there are survivors out of that. They scramble again to the first car. So I guess there are a total of 7 in this one vehicle now, and they're trying to get away, and they get hit again. These were not accidents. These were deliberate. There were people giving them instructions to do this. An accident is like, I got my cup here, and if I reach for it and knock it over, that's an accident. If I keep doing it, I keep doing it every 2-3 minutes, not an accident. I'm intending to do that. And that's exactly what the Israelis did. They consciously murdered these folks because they've been doing it all along since October 7th, for God's sake. I mean, please wake up, people. On October 7th, tanks were blasting houses with Israelis inside, even though they were told there was Israeli civilians. They didn't care. They killed them. The people fleeing in vehicles from the rave after the Hamas attack started, almost all Israeli, they were killed. Nobody's sure of the actual number that were killed, but it looked to be several hundred. Like it could have been as many. So what we're saying is as many as probably more than 50% of the casualties that Israel suffered on October 7th were caused by Israel. And then they shot the three young guys who were Israeli citizens who'd been taken hostage by Hamas. They managed to escape, and they knew, trying to get back into Israeli lines, they knew what a bunch of evil bastards these guys were. So they took their shirts off and they're waving their white shirt. Hey, see, we're naked, nothing here. They still got shot. Why? Because the Israelis, hey, if you're there, as far as we're concerned, you're a Palestinian terrorist. Doesn't matter whether you're carrying a firearm, a weapon of any kind. We're going to shoot you anyway, which is exactly what they've done. Or the two elderly women, one was in her 60s, one was in her 80s, or it was her mother, and they're at a church there in Gaza, and the 60-year-old's trying to get her 80-year-old mother to the bathroom, and they get killed by an Israeli sniper. So it's the pattern. But now all of a sudden, because it's these Europeans, Americans, they're not those nasty, despicable, subhuman Palestinians. These are actual real Americans, real Poles, real Brits. Oh my God, this is outrageous. Okay, so you kill over 30,000 Palestinians, over 14,000 kids. Nobody cares. Right now, I did the math, it's 224. So we're roughly at 6 months. So let's just divide 224 by 6. Well, you get well over 35, right? Not quite 40. So that's how many aid workers are dying each month. Okay, 35 like one a day. More than one a day. Journalists. The average number of journalists being killed in Ukraine on a monthly basis is close to 20. And compare that with Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. Journalists that have been killed there, either on the Russian side or Ukrainian side, work out to one a year. Not one a month, one a year. So what Israel is doing is operating on a level of carelessness, recklessness, and brutality that we really haven't seen, I think, since, at least in Europe, since the Nazis. It's really, it's unrelenting what they're doing.
The other aspect would be, what's the reason behind these attacks on these people who are helping Gazans? Do you think they're trying to intimidate those people who are helping?
They want to shut down the food distribution. They want to starve the Palestinians. So and this is particularly ironic because this chef, Jose Andres, I know him. We're not friends. If I was walking down the hall, he probably wouldn't recognize me. But we were both at the same golf club at Potomac at Avenel Farms and just outside of Bethesda, Maryland. And see him in the locker room, see him in the dining room, see him at the tournaments, the member guest tournaments. And he became the darling of the Democrats when he was under contract to open a restaurant at Donald Trump's hotel built in the old post office building there in D.C. And Chef Andres said, "Oh, I'm not going to open my restaurant," and made a big deal out of it, walked out, broke the contract, and insulted Trump. Oh, man, left. All the anti-Trumpers loved him. Oh, this great guy, great guy. So now he's got this charity, World Central Kitchen. He hasn't, until his people got killed the other day, he didn't say a damn word about the unrelenting murder of Palestinians by the Israelis since October 7th. Not one word. Not a word of protest, not a word of condemnation, nothing. Oh, but he's providing food to the Palestinians. Do you think he's doing that for free? Think he's just, oh man, I'm a wealthy guy, so I'm just going to do this out of the goodness of my heart. Nonsense. He's getting paid. They're making some money off this. It's a charitable foundation. Please contribute, but they're making money. And so now his people finally get a taste of what the Palestinians have been getting. And now he's outraged. Well, hey, welcome to the party, dude. Glad you're here. Now let's see if you do something with it other than, your initial, critique, presentation of your grievance, your initial mourning. Yeah, deservedly so. Understand why you're sad. But now let's see if you're going to make the death of those people count for something. Because it was deliberate on the part of Israel. No, there should be no doubt in anybody's mind. I listen to these pathetic government spokesmen for Israel, hell, even our own with Kirby and that Matthew Miller State Department. You do not accidentally fire a drone 3 times. That's not an accident. Conscious decision, chain of command, senior officers looking over the shoulder. It sounds like the Israelis are blaming it on 2 lower level junior officers. They've been, quote, disciplined or removed. They ought to be on trial. They ought to be court-martialed. They ought to be up on war crimes. That's what this was.
2 countries that are so important in this conflict in Gaza, Turkey and Egypt. When you see Erdogan, when you see Sisi, they're condemning Netanyahu. On the other hand, they're trying to make some deals. In your opinion, what's the reason behind this type of behavior?
These are, well, in Erdogan's case, it's money. The flow of oil to Israel is putting money in his pocket. So, yeah, he talks a good game, but it's catching up to him. You saw the municipal elections, they lost badly. So it looks like the street sentiment in Turkey is turning against Erdogan. And, according to Doug McGregor, and I trust him on this, indicated that the popular view in Turkey is to take strong action against Israel, much stronger than what Erdogan's doing. Al-Sisi's in a similar kind of position. He's, I think there were business relationships with Gaza and Israel that were benefited Egypt and Al-Sisi in particular. But you know, you gotta choose one side or the other. This lukewarm stuff is going to blow up on them. It will catch up, and I'm waiting to see how long we get a sustained reaction over this killing of the WCK workers, because it really did touch off a firestorm that we have not seen heretofore.
We know that Russia and China reacted to this attack on Iranian consulate. How did you find the reaction on the part of Russians and Chinese?
Oh yeah, no, the Russians and Chinese were condemning it in the strongest terms possible. What was ridiculous is the French and the Brits. You know, they're sort of lukewarm condemnation. The French were appalling with respect to the bombing of the consulate. They basically tried to blame it all on Iran. You know, you're asking, you know, it's like blaming a woman who's been raped. They raped you because you wore, you know, clothing that was considered sexy. Well, that still doesn't justify someone committing an act of rape. And that's, you know, the same thing here with respect to Iran, what should be the inviolability of Iran's consulate as a diplomatic facility.